Now we need to talk about the value or the investment theses behind ETH or Ether, which is the cryptocurrency that represents the Ethereum network. So we got to talk about the Ethereum network just a little bit. I'm not going to go into too much technical detail on why it's different than the Bitcoin network, but suffice to say that the ETH or Ethereum network is basically this big global database. It's decentralized in a way that people are connecting computers or they're staking assets, and I'll get into that in a little bit, but individuals, companies, entities, whomever are trying to perpetuate the network, trying to move it forward, trying to keep it safe and secure, trying to transact on it or process transactions. And those entities are not necessarily a bank processing transaction or a government processing transactions. It's anyone can be part of the group that tries to perpetuate the network and tries to move it forward and tries to keep it safe and secure and make sure that the state of the network is valid at any one point. So ETH or Ether, whichever you want to call it, Ether is the cryptocurrency of the Ethereum network. And you use ETH in order to pay for transactions. So if I want to send you some sort of crypto asset that's based on the Ethereum network, I have to pay ETH to do so. And I'm paying it essentially to the network, but in so doing, I'm paying it to the validators that are validating those transactions. So I have to pay a little bit in order to make the network go. And what I pay with is ETH. So many people have heard of gas fees on the Ethereum network. So we convert ETH to gas, and gas is used to actually pay for the transactions. So in essence, part of the investment thesis behind ETH is, do I think in the future there are going to be more transactions on the Ethereum network, and therefore there's going to be more demand for ETH to be able to pay for those transactions. Sometimes we say it's paying for block space. It's paying for my transaction or my asset to be memorialized on the Ethereum blockchain at this time. How much am I willing to pay for that is likely driving the value of ETH or Ether in the future. So part of the investment thesis again is, what do I think is going to happen in terms of transactions on the Ethereum network in the future? And that's where we start talking about this actual adoption, not just adoption in terms of institutions buying ETH and holding it or buying ETH and staking it, but what is the adoption rate of people actually utilizing it? And that's where we look at things like PayPal implemented a stablecoin or created a stablecoin based or on top of the Ethereum network. We have companies like Shopify that are accepting these stablecoins. We have Visa, MasterCard and such that are actually processing payments. We have the likes of BlackRock saying we're going to have, it's called tokenized assets, potentially on the Ethereum blockchain. So we say, okay, if all those entities are transacting on this chain and they're not necessarily doing it for crypto purposes, they're not doing it for speculation, they're not doing it because they want the number to go up, they're just doing it because it's a better database than what we have now. If they're going to continue to do that, do I think the value of that token that I have to make those transactions go, do I think the value of it will go up? Meaning, do I think there will be more of a demand for it? Will I have to pay more for block space? And if that's the case, that's part of the investment thesis and valuation of ETH. You know, Fidelity has a report about the potential value of ETH. A guy named Michael Nadeau, who publishes something called the DeFi Report, has an Ethereum valuation framework or an Ethereum investment framework for how to look at the value of ETH. And it gets very much more into fundamentals. How much do we think there's going to be adoption of the network? And therefore, how much do we think the value of ETH will be in the future? So that's part of the investment thesis. So as you as a financial advisor look at adoptions, when again, BlackRock talks about tokenization of assets, when Boston Consulting Group and Citi and JP Morgan start talking about tokenization of assets on the Ethereum blockchain, when JP Morgan actually goes through a transaction, that's when you think to yourself, okay, this is adoption of the network, and it's not necessarily making some token that JP Morgan is using go up in value, but I have to pay to transact on that. JP Morgan has to pay to transact. Therefore, with all those transactions, what's going to happen to the value of the network, the value of that space on the blockchain, which is very finite, and therefore, how much are people going to be willing to pay for it? So it's going to be, again, a supply and demand investment thesis, but it's very much based on not necessarily the demand for the asset, but the demand for ETH in order to make transactions happen. If we think the likes of BlackRock and JP Morgan and Citi and Deutsche Bank and all those, PayPal, Shopify, Visa, MasterCard, if we think there are going to be more transactions, then in theory, the value of the token should go up or we will be able to identify a value of the token because we're going to have an idea of how much adoption, how much people are going to use it, and how much they're willing to pay for space on the Ethereum blockchain.